All right, so why don't you just introduce yourself, your name, your tag, and your main?
My name's Jake. My tag is Pensive, and I play sheep.
All right, so why don't you give a quick rundown then on the history of, or like the origin of your current and or former tags and mains?
Um, so for a long time I didn't have a tag. Basically, I got into competitive gaming around 2011. I watched Evo. I watched that year's Evo, and I had just bought Marvel 3.
Hmm.
I've been playing games for a long time, for basically my entire life. I'm a gamer, and when Marvel 3 came out, I really wanted to get into a fighting game. So I started picking that up, and then I watched Evo 2011. It obviously kind of changed my life. I really, really, really enjoyed watching it.
Hmm.
Um, and so I got really into the fighting game community. Except I never really entered anything. And so when I was getting it to Smash, and I was at a point in my life where it was a lot easier for me to actually attend things and participate in the community. Um, I thought about the kind of tags that I liked when I was watching the FGC, and actually, I always kind of dug that Justin Wong and Ricky Ortiz just went with their full name, just because I didn't like the idea of going into the competitive gaming space with an alias. I really wanted to still be Jake.
Hmm.
And so I went as Jake Peskin. I entered as Jake Peskin for 3 years. I think between 2014 and into or 2 years and into 2016. Oh no, into 2017
Yeah, I
because
think it
I
was,
got
yeah.
pensive.
Mhm.
No, because I got pensive when I basically I broke up with my college girlfriend, and I was I was going through all the motions of that, and it was a very pensive time for me. So Alan at some point was just like, Jake, you're being pensive all the time, and I was like, oh shit, that actually would make a great tag. Partially because it alliterates with my last name, and because I am a very spacey kind of
Hmm.
person. So
Hmm.
uh, that's why I got pensive.
Hmm. And in terms of character, if you ever had any other mains or how you found this one.
So I also played a lot of a lot of Brawl. And in Brawl I played Falco. Um and I remember I saw Evo 2013, and I was watching that, and I was just like, these motherfuckers are canceling the lag on their, or the recovery. Still used FGC terms. The recovery on all their aerials. That's how they're moving so fast. Like, how are they doing that? So then I started trying out a lot of characters with the advanced techniques.
Hmm.
Um, and I was kind of full of myself. I was kind of full of shit where I thought Falco combos were a little too linear. It's because I didn't know anything. And so somehow I got kind of bored with the character and trying him out. And when I picked Sheik, something just felt like it clicked, which was probably just because she's really easy to do well with and pick up.
Hmm.
And I interpreted all of my F tilt fairs and all of my hitting Fox CPUs out of their up Bs when I knew they're gonna up B below the ledge every single time.
Hmm.
I interpreted all of that as this character really connecting with me, and it being really, my me my best the best way I could connect with the game.
Hmm.
And so I just kind of stuck with Sheik. And then there was a certain point where I was just I could switch characters. But at the same time, I from the start I really invested a lot of thought into the character, and so I've never really thought about switching, just because I've had kind of times when I was like, okay, I'm gonna try a very different avenue with melee by switching, and then that just never pans out because so much of the effort I've put into the game is in Sheik, so
Hmm.
I have to start from scratch, it feels like.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of getting into competitive melee for you, like not necessarily exclusively to Santa Barbara, would you say it was like you were in it and then you stuck, like you just kind of that was it, like you were in it and you were in it, or was there a break, or were there sort of dips in activity before you kind of settled on something more consistent?
You mean in terms of entering tournaments and being
Just
a
kind
part of
of
the scene?
just picking the game up, really, whatever that entails for you.
So I started playing pretty much in fall. Well, I think the doc was in like 2014. I think it was either 2014 or fall of 2013 where I just started practicing little bits of tech skill. And there was there was this teacher at my high school who was a big gamer, which was really interesting. But we had a bunch of fucking CRTs at Beverly, and he just set up a bunch in his room.
Mhm.
And so we'd have Smash Fest, and that was when PM was on the come up and Melee was also on the come up. So there's a lot of PM and Melee in there. And so pretty much from when I started going there till I would say maybe even up to COVID,
Mhm.
I've been a pretty consistent part of, or the Melee community has been a pretty consistent part of my life. Um, I think to various degrees, but I've been showing up to stuff. I mean, it's an easy thing to do and it's
Mhm.
fun. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
Do you remember what your first tournament was? And like anything related to that experience?
It was so I remember the first tournament. It was well, the first like real Melee tournament. I think I hosted one myself when I was in high school, but I don't want to count that. Um the first like real tournament I went to was the summer of 2014. It was like east of LA. I went on the like somewhere out in the San Bernardino, and I yeah, I one of the first people I played friendlies with was Squid. I remember that. I remember I forgot my controller. Someone had to lend me a controller. There was round robin pools, and I think I went something like 4-2. I beat a Yoshi, and I beat a Ganon, and then I got just fucking washed by this Marth. And I was like, sure, I think he double four stocked me. I'm like, all right, this guy's so good, he's got to be ranked. And then he wasn't ranked, and I was like, oh shit, this is fucked up. like, like people are fucking good.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's particularly what I remember of it. It was a very like I didn't have a lot of friends at the time, so it was a very like I didn't it wasn't a very social thing for me. Although people were nice. And yeah, so that was my first tournament. I also was supposed to enter PM too, and I didn't
Mhm.
because I forgot to register.
Mm,
So
okay. I mean, I think that's
yeah,
happened to like, I think a lot, pretty much everyone can like relate to an experience where they like forgot to register, or just like, didn't wake up for like a pool or something, or like maybe just like
yeah,
the TO calling matches just wasn't loud enough.
yeah. I even did it a couple times in 2019, like in NorCal. I just be at the tourney and they'd be like, "It's starting," and I'm like, "Wait, can I register?" They're like, "No, dude, we called like 5 times," and I was like, "Shit, fuck, I didn't hear."
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but anyway, so yeah, I mean, I really started out as a PM player though. So most of the tourneys I went to were PM.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
So skipping forward a bit, when did you kind of get indoctrinated into like the SB scene, would you say, or like what was like, maybe your first tournament or experience with that?
So before I went into Santa Barbara, I was like, okay, they have like I just looked up it. I looked it up on Facebook because I was sure it was there,
Hmm.
because people have been adding me to a bunch of other communities. And then yeah, they were like, we're on Tuesdays at Herald Front Hall, so I just went first week of college, and was a consistent member of the community since from that point.
And that was fall
So
2014 for anyone wondering.
fall 2014, yeah,
Hmm.
wow, 7 years ago. Um, but yeah, so that was the beginning of that, and it just carried through pretty consistently.
Hmm.
Um, and the first tournament, it's hard for me to remember the first tournament in Santa Barbara, but I do have a memory of an early tournament. Like one of the first tournaments I played in, there was this like, I know we did maybe like a ladder sort of thing because I remember playing a set with Bernsey, and like he fucking destroyed me. And then I remember playing a set with Luigi Kid. I think that was probably the first tournament that I played, and we were playing to get it to top 8 losers. So what happened with Luigi Kid, just for some context,
Hmm.
is that like basically I played this set with him. Like I beat his Luigi, he switched to Falcon, he beat me with Falcon. Then he didn't show up for like 6 months, and then he comes back, and then he becomes like the Luigi Kid we know, who's just fucking people up, like a top 3 player in the community. So that was before he had that like weird or that crazy just like
Power spike.
ascendance.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Damn, that's pretty crazy. Didn't know that he was just a mere mortal for a little while.
He was a mere mortal.
Yeah, well, people were here. Um, so in terms of like I guess, your impression of like SB coming in? Like, what was that like, and how did that kind of change over time? We're kind of going through the timeline kind of fast right now, but you know.
No problem. So I mean, I don't know what my first impression. I've been to a few tournaments. I've been to a few. I've been following competitive gaming. It all seemed like pretty much what I expected. Um, and the people were cool. I mean, people were nice to me. I was super ambitious in the beginning. I was like
Mhm,
very ambitious in the beginning.
mhm,
And so I was like more interested. I was very interested in how good people were, especially because I was a freshman,
mhm,
and you're making all these friends in your dorm, and you're meeting people constantly. That it was just like, my first like instinct wasn't to just like start getting buddy buddy with everyone. So I was really just interested in how good people were, and it was interesting to also come in there and be kind of mid level. I didn't expect that. I thought I'd get beaten harder, um, but it seemed like there was like about half the players could beat me and half the players couldn't. That was that was what I remember.
mhm.
So yeah.
Okay. Um, so in terms of like comparing like your first year to your last year here and stuff, like how would you say like your um I guess your relationship to the scene and like your perception of like the sort of the culture and like the atmosphere of it changed over time?
So I mean, huge. Like it was a very big shift. I think when I joined, it was a lot of people who were kind of, there were Dark Ages players. So like you talk a lot about like people were just more. I feel like overall there was more drive,
Hmm.
more drive to really succeed, and more drive to actually go out of their way to succeed, which I thought was interesting. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that back in those days, you aren't really going to get a lot out of joining Melee unless you have that drive. That's important to actually having a really full experience. Whereas as things got bigger, you can kind of chill out a little more and still get like you can get more proportionally out of less effort,
Hmm.
um, in terms of events and stuff. So that was a huge part of it. Is that people? I mean, Malachi talked about it too. I think that people were really well respected. I mean, Santa Barbara players were really well respected outside or within the SoCal community. And I think that added an extra sort of aura to the top players that I kind of felt untouchable to me.
Hmm.
Um, and so in that way, I felt like the Smash community was buddy buddy, and it was close and tight knit a lot of the ways it was once the scene kind of shrunk again in 2017, 2018. Um, but I also think that there was more of a like a feeling of like there was more of a feeling of power like where these guys are respected and these guys are like high up people. Like you go to a tournament, people are afraid of Cool Kid, they're afraid of Sakamoto, they're afraid of Kreger. Um, and so that was one part of it that I think was unique to that era, because I don't think we ever got back to that point,
Hmm.
where the community itself was so well respected as a whole instead of a few players. So that's one element of it. I mean, our college. I mean, my college years, my undergrad years were such a momentous time in Melee too, um, and so the scene getting bigger. I think one thing I really like about that is that there's just kind of more diversity in personalities,
Hmm.
towards the end. I think in the beginning you did have a lot of people who were kind of more like archetypal, like nerdy-ish, like gamer sort of like, not to say that there's anything wrong with that. It's just like, people were really kind of aligned in what they were interested in their aesthetics, and a lot of those elements or parts of them, outside of just being fans of Melee. Whereas by the end, especially in 2018 when I graduated, I think we had a lot of. I think the culture of the scene was a lot different. I think, uh, and you just had people with kind of more carved out kind of identities outside of Melee, um, and so I thought that made it really interesting.
Hmm.
Um, And yeah, and I think part of that, it made it a little bit, I think that made the community more interesting to me. Not to say that the old people were uninteresting, it's just it made it feel fuller.
Mhm. Yeah, like the people behind the players kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. So in terms of like playing the game and like uh sort of just I guess like competing in it and improving in it, like what was like your like I guess what was like how did you approach improving like and from all the angles that come with like actually practicing and stuff and also like your attitude and motivations for that?
I always wanted to have a thing that I knew I was working on, or like how I, I remember when I first in my first year, people would always be like, "Jake, you never use needles," and I'm like, "Don't worry, give me like a few months, I'll start using needles." And it's because like how I practice, especially in the beginning, it's like I'm all right. I'm learning ledge dashes, and all of my tech skill practice was ledge dashes. Then I wanted to learn near to shield, and all my tech skill practice was near to shield, and I'm still bad at it. And then I wanted to then with shield dropping, and then with whatever the thing was that I felt like I had to add to my toolkit, I would devote myself entirely to that in my solo practice. I never really had a real rigid routine, and a never really a well-rounded routine. But I also played so much melee, and I felt like just practicing tech skill on my own was kind of beating a dead horse.
Mhm.
Which I was wrong about. But I just didn't feel valuable enough, especially when I need to do other things besides just play melee. Um, and so yeah, but in terms of proving in the game, and in terms of like playing the meta, whatever, I really also try to be very particular in terms of what I'm focusing on and what I'm trying to improve. It's too much to try to see too many things at once. You're always going to have several issues that you're kind of up against. If you can notice one of them, just focus on that until you really understand it, and then you can start to look at for other things. I think just making sure you're working on one thing at a time was what really helped me. And then also making sure I don't have to like I think people there was a lot of talk I think especially when I was first started out about like, oh, I don't want to autopilot, or I want to I want to be thinking more. And I think the game's just so fast that for me, I wanted to build good habits. That was more my approach, was
Mhm.
like, I want to build good habits. I don't want to have to think about these things, because there are a lot of decisions that I make that are great that I don't even think about. There are a lot of decisions that I make that are bad that I don't even think about. So let's look at the decisions that are bad. Let's think about how to reframe this in my mind so that I react to this, or my impulses when a situation like this arises, I am able to take the thoughtful answer more often than not, or I'm able to distill a situation down into kind of its most important um, elements. Like kind of like when you're driving, it's like you don't need to like focus on everything around you at the same time. It's like
Mhm.
if you just know like if you're turning right, you got to look left, and you got to look left for cars, and you got to look right for people. If you focus on everything else around you, you're just like bogging your brain, and it's going to be like there's going to be too much uncertainty, and you're going to have a hard time being confident making that turn. So I did the same thing with melee. It's like, if a what's a good example? I don't know, it's kind of hard to think. But like if I'm like running at a peach, right? Like there are a peach could dash dance, a peach could float, a peach could pull a turnip. Like that's all I need to know. I don't need to think more about that. I don't need to think 3 or 4 steps ahead. I don't need to like
Think about what they do after floating or dashing or whatever.
I'm trying to read that move.
Yeah.
I am trying to read the float. I'm trying to read the dash.
Not
If
what
I
comes
miss,
after. Mhm.
yeah, not what comes after. That's the thing with peaches. I'll just hit them out of the float. There's nothing that comes after if I hit them. So that's the thing. It's just like really, I just distill it, and I try to be as direct as possible. And there are probably cons to that mindset, but I think it helped me just make sure I always was improving in some way. If I knew I was bad at something, then I knew I could, if I always had an idea of what I was bad at, or what, at least one habit that I had that was, not good for me, then I could work on that.
Mhm.
And so I just always made sure to just have a good idea of what ways I could improve in small small kind of ways. And then really just understanding the characters and the matchups.
Hmm.
Um, just understanding what characters can and can't do in certain situations,
Hmm.
and what characters do or don't like to do. How what I do makes them feel, is important. So just that understanding of my opponent,
Yeah.
is important on top of just my bad habits.
Yeah. I think that kind of what you said about like pros and cons, the way you approach the game, like I think that's like what makes some players like not all players. I don't think every player needs this, but I think some players are really good because of their ability to like. Actually, I think it usually comes. I don't want to create like a false dichotomy here, but like I think a lot of players tend to either like really understand those advantages and disadvantages to like the way they view the game, and then like are able to sort of maximize like the advantages that come with it in their gameplay and minimize the disadvantages that come with it. Or
Mm.
like they're able to synthesize a ton of viewpoints and like see the game from a lot of different angles. Like I know for myself, I had like a hard time seeing past like the game itself, but like when I picked it up again with Slippy, my goal and like my whole mindset has been to not think about what good like because for a long time like I've thought of like good and bad options and stuff, but like I'm trying to like just do like a test. I don't know, like a year I guess of just being like there are no I'm not like really super going like into the absolute sense of this, but like there's no good or bad options. You just want to pick the ones that beat your opponent. And like I'm trying to really play to the player.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's how I always played, and that was part of the reason why I did so much better in region than out of region for a long time.
Okay, that makes
Was
sense.
because I really played players, and kind of it wasn't even like a very like direct level of me like saying like, okay, I'm playing Malachi. This is what Malachi does.
Hmm.
I think it's just when you play the same people so much, you're just
Pick up.
accustomed.
Hmm.
You just go into these matches with a certain mindset, that's just very ingrained.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I remember when we were coming up, and so basically, Cameron, Eigen, Malachi, MG, and I were all on the same floor, which was so fucking lucky.
Hmm.
Our freshman year, and we'd play together a lot. And I was the best player for a long time out of the three, and I just remember Malachi being very frustrated with how slowly he was improving, because he was actually the worst in the beginning. And he was looking up a lot of guides, and I remember at that time I was like, I didn't like the idea of taking orthodox approaches to like
Hmm.
melee, because it seemed like there are too many variables in every situation for me to really say like this is the right thing to do.
Hmm.
And that's probably changing, to an extent, but I also feel like everyone always thinks the game's going to be figured out, and then it
Never is. Never is. Yeah.
so that's basically how I've always done it. I've never really tried to ascribe to any sort of orthodox way of dealing with situations. I wanted to deal with them in a way that made sense to me,
Yeah.
and that was what my brain would do. And I kind of learned that organically by trial and error.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like in terms of yourself, because I remember you kind of just touched on like how Malachi was like frustrated like with his improvement and like moments and like how spoiler alert, he ended up being like one of the strongest players to come out of the region. I would argue.
Definitely.
And for yourself, what would you say are some of like your like the things you really struggled with and like succeeded in at the game like over time? Not necessarily in your time in SB, but like just kind of if you want to give some insight on those.
Yeah. So biggest thing I think for me as a player is that I'm just sloppy. Like I am just a sloppy fucking player. I don't look good to watch, which is part of the reason why I never liked watching my VODs, is because I'm fucking sloppy all over the place. But what's kind of funny about that is it tilts people because they think I'm worse at the game than I actually am, because my tech's so bad. But my decision making is very deliberate, and it's very based on a lot of experience and knowledge.
Yeah.
And so that kind of tilts people, which can be funny. So I think never having a real practice routine, I think that's part of the reason why I kind of feel like I've plateaued. I never was able to beat a lot of ranked players. And I think they were always just more consistent. I could never match their consistency because I didn't have the discipline that they did. And that was a discipline that Malachi had. And that was part of the reason why he, took off in a way that I never did. And so that's a big thing. I also think that a lot of my habits, or a lot of my reads, are based on kind of new player habits,
Mm,
and sometimes I can get blown up for that
okay.
by players who are better. And I just kind of, I like chump check, and it's weird.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely can empathize with that. I think like, yeah, because there's like sort of habits that are more and less common at different levels, and it's funny because sometimes the ones at lower levels come back again at higher levels. Like,
Well, yeah, yeah,
but
because I mean, it's always a mix-up to do the shitty thing. I
yeah,
actually do that against top players all the time. I love doing that against top players. Like, I'll do something like we start on Battlefield, and like when we're like kind of feeling each other out neutral on opposite side of the stage, I'll just run off a platform and fair like 3 times, and then when they come up and try to like up tilt me from when I run off the platform, I'll like shield drop a little behind and then hit them because they think I'm a scrub and then I'm not.
mhm,
Um, so I mean, everything is a mix-up.
yeah,
Like you said, there are no true good or bad options. Um, and so, but I definitely, I think I look for certain tech skill errors that just become much less common. Or I look for people to have certain blind spots that they stop having.
mhm,
So,
yeah. I can relate to that. Um,
yeah.
so in terms of like, I guess like you kind of have touched on it, but if you want to answer more directly, like your own description of your play style, or I guess so this is something I haven't really prompted from other people yet, but like maybe if you have it, other people's descriptions of your play style as well.
Yeah, I mean, people describe me as defensive. I probably was. What's interesting though about like being considered a defensive player is that I always felt very engaged when I was playing.
Hmm.
Um, and I think part of it is chic. You just have to be very careful in how you approach because everything is a commitment.
Hmm.
Um, and I think though my playstyle has changed a bit. I don't know if people would still call me campy or not. I mean, I don't know what your threshold, like how much
Right.
standing back makes me campy or how much going forward makes me aggressive.
Hmm.
I think I remember when I started playing uh Sakasumoto was like watching me, and he basically told me like if you're just gonna like wait for openings, you're never gonna be able to control a match. And so that was something that stuck with me very early on.
Hmm.
And I think especially once I started Malachi's Fox really adapted to my playstyle in a way where he forced me to come in. And so I started building a more dynamic playstyle that way, and I kind of liked it because it's super read heavy, and I think that's a super compelling way to play the game. And so now I think especially I'm very, very read heavy, especially on Slippy because
Hmm.
you have a lot of shitters.
Yeah.
I just go in, and it's like I look for those sort of moments, right, where it's like I'm running at a fox who's dash dancing. What is he gonna do? He's gonna go backwards. So let's just chase him.
Hmm.
Or this fox is like running back and forth in center stage. He is obviously gonna full hop when I run at him because he's gonna try to like drill a dash attack. So I'm just gonna run up and up air him. So I think what makes the game most fun for me is just to try to read everyone's jumps, read everyone's dashbacks, and just play it that way.
Hmm.
And I've seen actually getting pretty decent at it, which is cool. But obviously, it's one of those things that is less good as people get better and they're able to adapt their play styles around it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think I'm good at whiff punishing, and like I said, I a lot of my play style is built around exploiting weaknesses in people's play, um, kind of in a way that Hungrybox does. At the same time, I think I can't live off that. I can't live off that
Yeah.
alone, and I have to go in. I have to chase foxes. I have to chase Marths. If I just stand back, I'm going to be super. I'm going to be super timid. And I think that was more what my playstyle was like in the beginning. It was not very confident.
Mm.
Um, and that as I got better at the game, and I think I also have different play style. I mean, I think it's part of like how I play in tourney with tourney nerves, or how I play against better players
Hmm.
versus newer players, or how I'm playing when I'm like frustrated or not frustrated. There's like a confident play and there's a less confident play, and that less confident play is always going to be much more campy, and the confident play is going to be much more aggressive.
Hmm.
So
I guess that kind of also I think that segues well into like how would you say for yourself playing like you kind of touched on already playing inside and outside of tournament, but like what are some of the things like how do you maybe more want to directly address like sort of things like the factors of like playing inside of tournament that aren't present outside of tournament, and like how much do you think that factors into like making a player good?
Um, yeah. So what's different? I mean, yeah, I think mostly what's different is just the feeling that there's something on the line,
Hmm.
and I think it's just the emotions that people bring to it. That's the most different thing, besides the fact that you're gonna get like fucked on stage select because you play Sheik.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, and it's I mean a lot of it is about managing your nerves, and I think if you want to succeed as a competitor, yeah, you have to be good at managing your nerves. I think the biggest thing to make sure you have intact is your execution
Hmm.
more than anything else. And so I think a lot of my worst losses were when my execution was just really shoddy. And I think when I get nervous or feel unconfident, my execution drops a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, basically, I think execution is fundamental to that sort of like what makes a player better in tournament or less not as good in tournament. If they're able to hold that together, they can have nerves still succeed. Um, if not, they're going to have a very their performance in tournament and out of tournament is going to be very different. And in terms of it making a player good, I think if you're judging them based on how able they are to succeed in a competitive setting, yeah, 100%
Hmm.
in that place.
When it comes to playing people outside of tournament, like what makes it an enjoyable or an unenjoyable experience for you?
I mean, I think it's the same as what everyone else has really said.
Hmm.
I don't think I need to go that deep, but
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
fine.
yeah, I want someone who's friendly. I do like talking to people. Usually, I'll just compliment them on something to try to open up
Yeah,
to try to open them
get some
up
rap
a
like
little bit.
report going.
Yeah, I'll compliment them on something. Sometimes they really don't want to listen to me, which
Yeah,
is funny. And then at that point, I'm like, all right, well,
yeah,
sorry for telling you your link is good.
yeah.
Um, but I think maybe they think it's pretentious or like facetious because I'll be like beating them and then I'll say like, oh, but you did this really cool thing,
Hmm.
when I'm being genuine. But yeah, I just want someone who's nice and who really adapts their play style. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Um, who I can tell is trying to play against me and trying to learn against me. And there's some people who just like get so frustrated and they just want to go in and they just want to like beat the shit out of you. And then there's people who react to losing by trying to adapt their play style. And I think that's always more compelling because then it becomes more of a conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, playing against people where like I think especially if you're beating people with like the same stuff over and over again, it becomes less fun because mixing up your options is a part of and like what makes it the game so fun, in my opinion.
And that's a big reason why Slippy gets kind of boring.
Hmm.
You play
Yeah.
a lot of fastball shitters who get very frustrated at Sheik, and it's just like the
Hmm.
same. They do the same thing over and over and over again. Um, and so yeah, like last night I was playing Slippy after I watched the two interviews, and there was this Falco who was like not super great, but after I beat him 2 games, he totally mixed up his play style. He started playing a lot more careful, and I just played like an hour and a half with him because he was really. I mean, we both kind of played around each other, and I think even though I won every single game, I did learn a lot.
Hmm. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
like there was like a peach last night that I played, or I guess like this morning. It was pretty degenerate hours, but like I think I two stocked them game one, and then I four stocked them 3 games in a row by just doing by crossing up their shield, and they would shield grab every time. Like I got like
Yep.
cross up. I got like a cross up empty land that's like an almost fully charged F smash because they just shield grab twice like in the opposite
Like
direction of me.
tough.
No, I'm playing Falco. I've been
Okay.
all Falco and Slippy. I've
Oh,
played,
cool.
so I'm like just back on the character. I'm just another
Nice.
Slippy Falco. Um, I guess a question that I kind of want to ask though, as an extension of the out of tourney thing that I haven't really directly asked other people yet, is how well do you think Santa Barbara accommodated those factors for you as a local scene?
Wait, what do you mean?
Like, because you were talking about like, things you like about playing people out of tournament, like people that'll adapt to you, people that are friendly, stuff like that. So like, how well do you think that like the people you played and like just maybe the local scene of Santa Barbara was able to like satisfy those conditions for you?
Um, I think the years I enjoyed the most competitively were my first year, my last year.
Mm,
Um, I, I think that yeah, I think it's been on and off. I mean, I always really there were a lot of people with bad mindsets, and they'd surface so quickly because I played Cheek, and I'd always be pushing them to like really like like just respect the game a little more.
mhm.
And so that was a big thing a lot. But I also feel like um, that people I don't know. What happened? I mean, a lot of people have talked about this happening after my class left, but the same thing happened for us in 2015, where all the good players were seniors, and then they graduated. I went from being like barely unranked in like a 12-man PR to being the fourth best player.
Mhm.
And so there is just always kind of a skill gap between me and a lot of other people. And so the amount of players I had who were really competitive against me was pretty small, basically up until my senior year. And so I think that was when it got really interesting again, especially people were playing so many different characters.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, but at the same time, I did live with other players who are around my skill level. And so I learned a lot from playing Malachi. I learned a lot from playing Alan. And so at least in that regard, I had that. But as the community as a whole, I think it felt like people were just learning more from me than I was from them.
Okay. That's an interesting insight. I like that though. Um, so in terms of like sort of since you kind of touched on like your first and your last years being like it sounds like among your favorite, what would you say that like for yourself there was like a golden age of Santa Barbara Melee?
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of its competitive strength, that would be like 2013, 2014.
Yeah. Mhm.
Definitely. I think my favorite year, though, was definitely my senior year. Um, just because, partially because of the character variety, even though all of like the best players, um, or a lot of the best players were floaty players.
Ganon,
Um,
Luigi, Peach,
and
Puff,
Luigi,
yeah.
Peach, Buff, yeah. But I really like the character variety. I really like to see people surfacing up and really like just being good. I mean, I just felt like we were really good, and it was cool, especially because I never thought we'd be able to get to like 2013, 2014 ever again, um, with with the way that the scene evolved. But partially that was just my low, like me projecting some low self esteem,
Mhm.
and so yeah, that year just everybody being really interesting to play against, and having a lot of different characters, having cool brackets that you didn't know how they're gonna go,
Mhm.
and just all these players who. Nelly came out of nowhere, and then Harry came out of nowhere, and then Commas came out of nowhere,
Yeah,
and then
Thomas came out of
Wyell,
literally nowhere.
yeah, Commas came out of literally nowhere, and then what's his name? Even Ybot came out of literally nowhere, and so
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I remember
all
that.
these all these players just kind of came out of the blue, and it just added a lot more dynamics to the scene. Whereas I mean, I think a lot of people who have talked about 20 like being in Hilo, like for me Hilo was literally just like, all right, I'm gonna go to this.
Oh, we got the crash, guys. It's Pog time. All right, you got your crash. You might be lucky to get another one, but we'll see. To be
Okay.
determined. You were talking about what it was like to go to Hillel, though.
Yeah, or Malachi, Tommy, and Allen, and Steven. Steven 100% would beat me a bunch at Hello.
Mhm.
But really, like it was just those four. Yeah, Malachi, Tommy, Allen, and Steven.
Mhm.
And apart from that, it was just it was kind of this, and Tony, okay, five. So there are five people, but it was kind of the same thing every week. And so once I got in my senior year, it just stopped being like that. I'd play a different person in grands, and my winter semis would be different. I mean, I just felt like I got to play a lot of different people, and a lot of different matchups were more challenging.
Hmm. Yeah, I think something also to like note about like because you named five people, but I'd argue it was like mm, it felt kind of rare that all five of them were there. Like if I
That's
kind
the
of
other
remember
thing.
that.
Yeah.
So
It would be. I think it feels more repetitive to me just because there were five people, but Tony wouldn't show up a lot. Tommy would come kind of half and half.
yeah.
Malachi and I were pretty consistent. Steven was too.
Hmm.
And then Alan was just a wash, so it wasn't super interesting to play against him
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot.
definitely.
So yeah. Um, yeah, those that was my golden age. It was a really cool era, especially I was putting in so much work at that time too.
Yeah.
And so to have it, I also think what made it really interesting is that, and I think this is one of the more subtle aspects of it, is that so we got like exiled from Hillel, and like in having what that did to the community, or at least to the Santa Barbara scene, is it made us no longer have like a central place where we meet. Like before, you'd go on the UCSB page and you'd be like, we meet on Tuesdays at Hillel,
Mhm.
and like in losing that, I think we kind of opened up the sort of, I think we got more creative. It's like, okay, let's try a tournament at Zoto's, let's try a tournament at Rockfire, or let's just go to SBCC. Like, let's try all these different venues, and you started to get more variety in the ways the tournaments felt.
Mhm.
And I think that also opened up the culture a lot.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
people got more friendly too.
Mhm. Yeah, and
So
that's a good insight. And just to clarify for anyone in chat that doesn't know, by exiled by Hillel, we basically just got money capped because we had a really good deal on like the venue space, and then we did not have a super great deal on the venue space, to my understanding, after that
yeah, but
person.
Caleb's parents donated a lot of money to Hillel, so that was
Yeah,
how that all evened
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
And so I didn't
Yeah, it
start
was just
donating
I
anything.
just don't want people to think that like we did some like heinous bullshit that got us like kicked out from
They
the venue.
exiled us.
Yeah. um, but yeah, no, I think that's a good point because I think that a part of me, I've actually been wondering this throughout some of the other like episodes and stuff, is I wonder if the culture kind of followed like the tournaments and stuff, or if the tournaments kind of followed the culture. It feels like it's really hard to identify, or like, and it might not, and I don't think it's that simple either exactly, but they definitely I think do have like a sort of um, what's the word, like a symbiotic relationship. Like people had
Yeah,
different desires, and people also had different, like had to sort of, I guess, I don't want to use the word settle, but they kind of had to just kind of adapt to like these new pop tournaments like popping up and trying to become like the dominant tournament like of the scene.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I don't think it was really like that because I was basically running all of them.
Hmm.
So it wasn't like I was there was competition. It was like, all right, I'm going to do this at Zoto's today, and then we're going to this other venue. I think because I remember at the end it was Zoto's, and it was the graduate student lounge,
Hmm.
and I was
Yeah.
the main I was the main TO for both of those. So there wasn't as much the competition, but those different venues were. I mean, we got the fucking deals on the drinks at Zoto's, and so that became more of a laid back tournament.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, Whereas the GSA was more of a cater to UCSB, more of a serious sort of thing. And so you
Hmm.
had that sort of difference in culture. Whereas when every tournament was at Harold Frank or every tournament was at Hillel, it was
The
one
same.
vibe, one culture, one sort of thing. And so yeah, I think that had a huge impact on it. I also think a lot of people talk about coming in around the Ivy Vapor period,
Hmm.
and I guess that was another period where there was some variety there. But and then they talk about the ways that like the scene was kind of clicky in 2015, 2016. And I think I think there's some gatekeeping and elitism that's a bit projected, as someone who was seen as the elite. um, I think what also happened was that people just got to know each other over time.
Hmm.
And so I think by 2017, 2018, we had more familiarity with each other. It wasn't like I was meeting people for the first time. People had been showing up for weeks and weeks, and people. actually, a more consolidated community started to form instead of
Mhm.
different groups of people kind of entering the scene at different times, having different cliques.
Yeah. Just to sort of clarify, when I was talking about like tournaments kind of like so to speak like competing against each other, I didn't mean to say like yeah like like TOs like or like you in like half the cases were like lobbying for one to be more or less, but it's just like the
Oh,
attendance and like the like sort of like the attendance numbers and like the frequency of being able to get the venue and stuff was like
I
it was
see.
more like what was going to be, not like who was like campaigning for this tournament series or not.
I didn't see it in like
Yeah,
such
yeah.
a like competitive way, but more
Mhm.
of like everyone wanted their tournament to be the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
competing more in like a
But
free market sense, I guess. Um,
yeah.
but I did you ever have, I guess, since you've talked about all of these, like, did you ever have a favorite SB tournament series? And
Yeah.
real quick, also, beyond tournament series, though I am interested in that, like a single tournament.
Yeah, I guess I think of what would my favorite tournament be? It's hard to say because
So
there's
many.
just so many that I
Yeah.
went to. I think a really cool tournament was I think Odyssey 2.
The
Maybe it
100
was
plus
Odyssey
entry
1.
one.
What?
The
Yeah, the
100.
100 plus entry.
That was I think
That
that's
felt
two. I
really
think
cool
I'm
to pull
almost
off.
positive that was two.
Yeah, no, that felt really cool to pull off, to bring all those people in and to make that happen.
Hmm.
I think that I was very proud of as a singular event. Um, and my favorite tournament series, um, I don't know. Like I said, there wasn't really tournament series for a lot of the time I played in Santa Barbara. We were just at one venue.
Yeah, well, I guess that would be. I mean, I would count that as like like there's like the Hillel tournament series, quote unquote, Harold Frank Hall, Ivy Vapor. I guess venue. I guess kind of what I'm more so asking is
Well,
like
functionally, Hillel was amazing.
a lot of space.
Functionally, Hillel as a venue, they gave us the whole closet and they only charged us $300 a month.
Hmm.
We got the whole event rooms too. So that was great, except we started at 8. But
Yeah, that was rough.
that was shitty. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I liked. For me, Hello felt more communal than I think it did to other people,
Hmm.
and I think part of that is because I was more integrated in the scene at that
I
point.
completely agree.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun at Hello, and Harold Frank was cool too. I mean, I think that was a very exciting time to be a melee player when you're on the come up. So I have a lot of fond memories of Harold Frank. Um, but yeah, I mean, I also have I have a big soft spot for Zotos just because it was the first time we really tried something. Um, or I guess IV Vapor was that, but I just wasn't involved with IV Vapor and it
Hmm.
wasn't a lot
It was
of.
more
But for
majorly
me,
off-site and like chill environment type thing.
yeah, yeah. So it wasn't the first time, but it was the first time that I was able to really be involved in that. And so I have a soft spot there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people cite Zotos as like a favorite. I thought they were really fun. I was amazed at how like given the vibe and like the options that you had to like do there, like just to play the game and like I don't know, get food, get drinks and stuff, like and just chill. Like I was really surprised that like it didn't pull as big numbers as like it could have, just from like within
Yeah,
the
it's
scene.
just out of the way.
Yeah, I think that plus like it being on Mondays a lot of the time was like the thing that kind of like the thing that kind of wing clipped it a little bit.
Yeah, but at the same time, it pulled crazy numbers for being out
Yeah,
of the way.
yeah, I do
And
agree. There were like a lot of like 20 plus, 30 plus like entry
yeah,
events that I remember. Um, so in terms of just like I guess like because you've kind of mentioned this already, but I sort of like if you could give again like a more direct answer, like how would you say your role in the Santa Barbara community changed over time?
I got in there and I really wanted to improve the scene.
Hmm.
Um, and so I did some stuff in terms of like I wanted to like build a brand for it, shit like that. And so I kind of renovated the look. Didn't age well, but so that was in the beginning. I was very ambitious, um, and yeah, I kind of had an in between role between like competitor and TO, and then Caleb started more leading things because I got into a relationship and shit, and so I think there was a period, especially when I was dating my ex girlfriend, where I was mostly just a competitor. And then that relationship ended, and then there was sort of a leadership vacuum once Caleb graduated, and so I was just really determined to keep the scene alive because we lost Hello, like right at the end of that school year. And so I remember that summer I was like, we need to find a venue, we need to find a venue, we need to find a venue. And then from there it was just about like making sure I just kind of grew into a role where I was just making sure another venue for another week and another bi-weekly. Um, and so yeah, that was how that TO role kind of came about. Kind of as necessity, but at the same time, I was pretty sure I was gonna. I knew that when the scene needed me, I was gonna be there for it. The whole time I was there. And when things were really mellow, when Hillel was just a constant thing every week, it didn't feel like I needed to step up in big ways.
Mhm.
And so yeah. I mean, you kind of did that more so in the Hillel times. You got us out of the just cycle of double a limb.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think my role was more about making sure that the hard stuff, like that we had the CRTs and then we had the venue, and that
Mhm.
we're following all the rules of the venue and everything. Um, and at the same time, yeah, at the same time, I guess I kind of had to be a community figurehead, especially because I was worried about the leadership vacuum that might happen once I graduated.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, yeah, so and then that was totally fine. That was like completely like I didn't need to worry about anything. Um, and so I wanted to be inspiring like that, get people to join. I remember
Mhm.
I like went with Alan to Lily's Tacos at when we went to SBCC at that tournament, and I was just trying to
Sure.
like gas him up and be like, dude, you could totally run this thing. Like you could totally be the leader of this entire scene, and just you gotta want it. Like,
Mhm.
and so and then I post a lot on Facebook, and so I guess that was another kind of role that I had, and then I was a top player. Um, but I never really felt like I needed to put a lot into being a top player besides playing the game because it didn't really ever feel like more than that.
Mhm.
Um, I know a lot of people would be like, top players need to do a certain amount of outreach to newer players. And I don't think I was ever necessarily, I don't know. I don't know how I came off to people. I always tried to be friendly with people when I played them. Um, I never insulted anybody. Um, but at the same time, I didn't I wasn't super, I guess, aware of the fact that I had any sort of elitist aura. Just because, like, obviously, like in this context, sure, I'm like a crazy player who might get fourth and make $3 from this tournament.
Mhm.
Um, but as soon as I leave, like, we're all like just
Yeah.
randos, just with the same fucking problems and the
Yeah, like
same like
no one's gonna like
responsibilities and
recognize you at
everything.
Genesis. No one's gonna be like, "Whoa, you're
No,
like
yeah, and I have no fame outside of that particular place, and so
yeah."
I didn't really internalize that status. I didn't have any internalized sense of that status, and so it never felt like a responsibility um,
Mhm.
until I started TOing.
Yeah, I think in local scenes it can be hard to recognize sometimes, like when it's like you like something that like you might want to like address or like change versus something that the other person's kind of projecting onto you like as like a competitor. Because I definitely had felt that. Like I was like never a good player in the scene. I think I was always like very middling in the scene. Like I think in every era of SB Melee, I was capable of like going 2-2, but like never too much better, never too much worse. And even then, like I could tell like people sometimes, because I think you and I both share a quality where like we like to just kind of be chill and like laid back. Like even in tournament, like we're like okay, if someone like goes and tells us about a set, we'll be like, oh, how was it? And like some people really hate that, right? And like their opponent is like down to just kind of take a moment out of the match. Um, and it's one of those things where like, yeah, it can be hard to tell like how much of it is you versus them. at times.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of it, like me being casual in those contexts. I mean, it's going to be different for someone if this is like their first or second tournament and they're really trying to prove themselves in some way. And it's
Hmm.
my literally like 50th tournament. I'm playing my second match, and it's the same thing every single week. It's not. I don't feel that same gravity of that moment. And so yeah, maybe I did come off as cocky because I wouldn't give that sort of context the same respect just because it was so pedestrian to me.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. I never really thought of it like that.
Hmm. I guess since we're nearing the hour mark, viewers, if you guys want to drop some questions, I will get to them. Hopefully all of them. But yeah, if you want to leave questions now, I just have a couple more that I want to ask myself. One of them that I definitely want to get to for you because a lot of people have mentioned you in this, or at least I think a decent number of people have mentioned you in this. Is for yourself, what would you consider some of your rivals in the scene? Kind of moving through it.
Yeah. So okay, so my two biggest rivals were Malachi and and they were very different rivalries.
Hmm.
Malachi, Malachi was always like they both kind of came up from under me. And Malachi, I like Malachi and I like knew each other. Like we were friends outside of Smash, or like our girlfriends were good friends. Like we were with each like literally roommates, so we were with each other like all the time. So I think it was kind of the back and forth there was like, okay, like I want to stay better than you, but at the same time, like I can't be mad that this guy's improving faster than me when he's going to 100 fucking tournaments a year and I'm just sitting on my ass every weekend. Um, Whereas with Steven, it was a lot more intense because I felt like he hated me. And so and it felt like when I played him, like there was a lot of hatred there. um,
Hmm.
like a lot. And so there was kind of an emotional. But I kind of dug it because there was emotional intensity there, where it's just like, the beating was like, it's there's a personal thing that you're kind of proving, I guess,
Hmm.
and that I could at least hone in on the game, whereas like because I had our personal issues. I'd never really understood them, and so it was confusing to me. And and so what I did was just like, all right, I don't need to like be friends with this guy. But if this is going to be this angry, then let's like make it fucking angry. And so I more just wanted to bring that into the game, and I think that's what made it a little more fun. Is that like I could be a little more shameless. I could be a little more like aggressive. I could kind of play up the personal element of it because it didn't feel like I had anything on the line with him personally by
Hmm.
like making him hate me more.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah. But yeah, so those were the two biggest rivalries, and then Steven and I were also really back and forth, and that's I think made it really compelling. And it was always just like I can't let you get past me. I
Hmm.
can't let you get past me. And then by my senior year, I was like, okay, not only can I not let this get past me, I want to like make him hate his character, like. And so that was the drive I brought to that one in particular.
Hmm.
Um, and so it was cool. I mean, it really pushed me competitively. And I never really actually had that strong feelings about him outside of the game, but in the game, I just wanted to, I like honed all of that. And I think it made me, it made me a better player, actually, just straight
Hmm.
up.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, rivalries, like having that competitive, like that extra oomph of like competition that transcends just like your individual performance is like something that a lot of people cite as like a big motivator for improvement. And I think I mean, I don't want to, obviously, I'm not saying that like I cannot do other things to improve, but I think that one of the things that over the years, like I've never really had is like I've never felt any sort of rivalry with anyone. Like I've never been invested in the game in that way. I think that's a part of why I never viewed it as that competitive of a thing for myself. Because I think that
Yeah.
rivals bring something. They bring something to the table that you are incapable of producing on your own by virtue of it being like a relationship with another person.
Exactly, and I think the fact that that relationship was more confrontational made me more driven to ensure that I was kind of on top of it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I did it.
Yeah, and that's dope. Okay, so transitioning into some viewer questions. The first one comes from Strider Chain Grab on Twitch right now, and it says, "What are some of your favorite memories from tournaments outside of SB?"
Memories from tournaments outside of SB. Getting out of pools for the first time at Genesis was really cool. I don't know. Like every Genesis is like awesome. I think Genesis is like literally like my one of my favorite weekends of the year, if not my
Oh
favorite
yeah,
weekend.
for sure agree.
And so I think my favorite memory of any tournament outside of SB is 100% Genesis 3 top 8.
Yep.
That was like watching fucking
Yep.
Rocky, but like it was happening in front of me. It was just insane for me. Like Mango just fucking everybody up.
Mhm.
Was so wild. I remember I was texting my ex-girlfriend just like long fucking like blocks of text about what was happening because I needed to talk about it with someone who wasn't there. That was the most exciting thing I saw in another tournament. But I think out of region tournaments, and I think if anyone is trying to get into a scene and wants to like get to know top players and wants to like really feel like they're a part of the community, go out of region with them. Because then you'll be when you're at getting dinner together, like no one cares about how good you are. You know, when you're sharing an Airbnb together, no one cares about how good you are. And so you put yourself in more context where you're just getting to know each other as people. And I think that breaks down a lot of those kinds of barriers that people may feel in terms of like status or like longevity or whatever. And so yeah, I think that's just getting to know a lot of people much better than I ever did before by going out of region with them was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sense of like unity and community that comes with like, going out of region, because people aren't competing against each other. Like it's like everyone just kind of wants to see people from their region do well, and then like you mentioned, like all the opportunities for like out of game camaraderie to sort of take place. Yeah, I think that going out of region is hugely underrated. And like from the SB perspective, I don't know that it's underrated in other regions.
Hugely underrated.
But from the SB perspective, I think we were just really spoiled with how many tournaments we had and how consistently we had them over all the years that a lot of people just didn't feel a need or a desire, like, why would I go out of region to play another tournament when there's just going to be another tournament next week? But it's like, I don't know. It feels like a lot of people that didn't go really missed out, because a lot of my favorite memories are from just going out of region and like, hanging out with people after the tournament ends and everyone's out.
Honestly, what's hard about that question is that there's just so many good memories. Mm-hmm. Like probably the vast majority of my best memories from playing Smash are from out of region.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's not even to say that like in region is like worse. It's different.
I will add on top of that, winning locals in London was fucking sick. And then what they do also in London is that they would split up, they take the pot and everyone paid in cash. But because it's not the US, there's a lot more coins that people use. And so what they do is they pay out third and second in the most like efficient currency they could give them, which meant that like, so if like someone's getting $6, they give them a $5, like a £5 bill, and then like a £1 coin, right? And then second place would get the £10 bill. And then they would just dump everything else on you. And so I'd literally come home from these tournaments just with pockets that were literally like dragging
overflowing,
full of coins. Yeah. People like, damn, bro, what the fuck did you do? I'm like, I won money in games.
Mm-hmm. That's hilarious. I didn't know about that. That's really funny though.
Yeah, but that was really cool. Getting to know a foreign scene was really cool. Really cool.
I think something that's also kind of there's also like a bit of an almost, I don't know, I don't want to say like it's uncanny, but there's definitely like an aspect of like going to out of region tournaments for you that are just like locals for other people that I think is really interesting and like it's really fun, honestly.
Yeah, and I think part of it is because I was a good player too, that I was able, people gave me a lot of respect and they wanted to talk to me. Mm-hmm. And I think if I wasn't as good, that wouldn't have happened.
Mhm.
And so it was easy for me in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that yeah, be like the sort of like greasing the social wheels of like yourself as a community member, um, you can sort of substitute a lot of like the actual like communicative like outreach towards other people with like skill. At least in Melee. I think in a lot of competitive communities it's like that, like personally speaking, even including
Definitely.
sports and stuff. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's definitely a thing that I think a lot of people, I think some people grow to resent that, but it's just how it is. And I don't think
It's
there's
how it
anything
is,
wrong with it.
and you can always just talk to people.
Yeah,
Like
definitely. It's very
you can always,
accessible. It's very
yeah.
accessible. Um, so Malachi, I was wondering, I guess I'll read these three messages because they kind of all go together, which is he's saying, forgetting the Jake-Dave rivalry, SMH. That was a banger rivalry, IMO. Curious if Jake considers that a rivalry.
I haven't lost ever to Dave. I don't know. That's the only reason I wouldn't consider that a rivalry.
Hmm.
I yeah.
Yeah, and I mean
I mean
I think that's a
that's
perfectly
my
fine
honest
answer.
answer.
I think that's a very good
Yeah.
answer.
I always felt like he had a lot of drive, and I always felt like he's someone who could beat me at some point. It never amounted. I think if I were to go back to Santa Barbara now and start to play, yeah, we'd have a pretty intense rivalry. I think he could totally beat me now, 100%. He just wasn't there yet. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
Malachi also wants to know, does Ernesto snore?
Yes. Well, yeah. So, yeah. When we at Genesis,
Genesis
what
4,
was the
right?
last six?
Oh,
It was
six.
it was six. It was my first year in Oakland. I was living in the back of this house in this little back house with people that I knew. And Malachi and Ernie came over, and dude, fuck, like Malachi had to sleep right next to Ernie on this bunk bed, and he had to like fucking blast like white noise in his ears.
Insane.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. It says it. Malachi says I'm echoing, and I can't hear myself echoing. Okay, I think I just need to talk at like a more medium tone. But let me see. Oh, I was gonna ask personally because I'm not sure if anyone else has elaborated on this, and if I'm going. Actually, yeah, I think other people could, but I'd like your insight as well. Sort of like the progression of like the group, like I think you were the freshman 4 or 5 is like kind of was your group. Like how would you it was like I think you, Sam, Colin, Malachi, and
Cam.
wait, you
Sam,
oh
Malachi,
yeah,
Colin.
I said Sam and not Cam, my bad. I thought I had said Cam. Yeah. So how would you say like what was like the dynamic of that like over time? I'm kind of curious, like, or at least from your perspective.
It was always, I mean, so Sam. So when in our first year, it was like we were just literally the 5 active freshmen. So it was just like we were all in the same grade. And then it was mainly okay. The rivalry that I missed that was actually really good was me and Sam. That was a great rivalry too. Because the way he played annoyed the fuck out of me. And he could beat me with 2 characters, which I thought was bullshit. But so yeah, Sam and I had a rivalry, and then it was more just like Cam and Malachi, and I remember it was Colin probably next in skill, and then Cam and Malachi were kind of trying to come up because they hadn't spent a lot of time, as much time playing before as the other 3 of us. And then yeah, I think the way it developed, just because Malachi, Cam, and I were on the same floor, literally, they were super accessible. We were always kind of closer. I think Colin was kind of on the periphery, and then Sam completely dropped out. Pretty quickly, I think after the first year. But I think it's I think it's cool. Cam and Malachi are like, if you were to have asked me who my 2 favorite players to play against, it would have been Cam and Malachi, because it felt like we always had a chill relationship. We always respected each other. And we were always trying to learn against each other. They were both people who really would adapt their play around me, and I'd adapt their play around my play around them. And so things would really evolve over time. And I think, yeah, that was just always interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Colin too. But Colin, I mean, I spent way less time with Cam and Malachi.
Malachi also wants to know, He says, if you could add a character from another Smash game to Melee, which would you add? Not including PM.
Oh. Um. Maybe not Wario because of Waft, but I feel like other things Wario has. I don't know. I would love. Well, I guess Young Link's in Melee. But if Young Link had the arrows that he had in Ultimate, but in Melee, I think it'd be way cool. Like if he can combo with those, that'd be sick. Maybe Cloud. Cloud would be interesting. It's hard to say though. I feel like Ultimate characters, especially, are such Ultimate characters. And so, in Smash 4, I mean, who? I mean, I guess so. They can't be in PM. I can't just say like put ZSS in Melee, because ZSS would be the other one. I guess a more a fully Melee ZSS would be cool too.
Yeah, that's always been my answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see her succeeding in a really enjoyable way in Melee, because like that's another thing is like some characters' game plans in the later games are just like, I don't want that in Melee. Like,
yeah,
I don't want
you
Sonic
don't
in Melee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. I guess I'm not sure if that particularly wraps. Oh, I guess something that's like that I'm kind of curious because, and this is something that I'm not sure. You know, you might not have an answer for it. There might not be a good answer for it. But do you think there's ever been like an SB Melee like metagame?
An SB Melee metagame. Maybe. I mean, I think the way I'd say yes to that would just be like, if you wanted to be at the top, you had to understand these people. And so I think, yeah, I mean, if you were me in 2016, it's like the SB Melee metagame is being good against Alan's Peach, Tommy's Falco, Malachi's Fox, Steven's Luigi, and then Yoni's. If Yoni's on a good day, just all the
bullshit that comes with it.
Yeah, like, and so that's how I'd see it in that way. I mean, I think maybe we were a little campy as a community, but I mean, it's hard to like, I don't know. I don't think we had a particular play style, but I do think at the top people were maybe more on the campy side. But then Alan was more aggressive, Tony was more aggressive. So I don't know. I'd say the metagame for me was always understanding players. And that was why, like I said, I would succeed more in region than out of region. When someone's random against me, I'd be like, you know, it's you don't know how good they are, you don't know the way they fucking play, and it was just a lot more.
Yeah, you have to figure it out like in the set. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. I guess actually there was one question I wanted to ask earlier, and I think that this is a good one to maybe cap off the episode, which is you kind of mentioned, I guess how your fourth year you enjoyed kind of like your senior year 2017 to 18, like that was like your favorite year probably. Would you say that being a TO and a player like sort of added to that in a way, like getting two avenues of like community fulfillment in the local scene?
Yeah, I mean, so a big part of what happened there is that I broke literally a huge pillar of like my social life kind of fell out with my relationship ending. And so I was just kind of like, all right, I'm writing out college. I'm just going to kind of invest in the Melee community to kind of fill that void. And so yeah, I think just being more involved just let me invest more of myself into it and gave me more time to be in it and more ways to get to know people and really just be involved. And I think that's the biggest part of that. I think being a TO and player, I mean, it was like of course I felt a little on top of the world just because I was winning tournaments that I was running. And so that was cool. I'll be honest, it was nice.
Yeah, definitely.
And so but I think overall, I mean, it would have felt like, there are top players who don't show up to locals they can easily win, and it would have felt shallow to me too. Absolutely, even with making that PR, I mean, it was just like people are good, and we should have some visibility into how this scene is evolving and it's dynamic, and that people have, there are rivalries within rivalries, or well, there's rivalries just within the PR. Like these players have rivalries, these players have rivalries. Just give people a bigger picture sense of the scene, because there's just a lot of interesting stuff going on in it, and I think a lot of interesting matchups. And so I think that more than anything was what did it. And then of course I know people really well. That was when I really started to get into the Santa Barbara locals. And yeah, it was. And then, like I said, the tournaments themselves became more varied, in terms of their feeling and their atmosphere. And so it's just exciting.
All right, I think that's I mean that I think that makes a lot of sense. I think yeah, definitely. I think that like yeah, winning the tournaments you're TOing, I mean that has to feel pretty cool. I wouldn't. I feel like if I were in that position, that would felt sick as well.
The best part of it is that I would put like literally I'd spend the whole day working on a tournament, and then I'd come out with the biggest paycheck, and that was fair. That was what was fair, is that I'd get the CRTs, well, depending on the tournament, but I'd set everything up, I'd make sure it was all running, I'd get the brackets ready, I'd do all the seating, and then I'd win it, and I'd come back with the big. If someone had a bigger paycheck than me, I would have been pissed. And so that was actually a big motivator in terms of the consistency that I had, was just making sure that if I'm putting in all this work, I'm definitely, I got to be the one making the most money.
I love it. I love it. I like that. I like that attitude a lot. But thanks a bunch for coming on. I had a really good time discussing all this with you, especially because you were able to give like some insights from earlier periods that other people couldn't really give as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that that is everything for the scheduled episodes of this season. Ernesto should appear as the final one of this season, so to speak, and then after that, I'm probably going to take a hiatus of sorts to like just because there's like more social burnout than I was expecting. Nothing to do with the people, more to do with just me booking like 1 to 2 of these like per day for the whole past week.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've had a really good time with it, and so I hope you guys have too in chat and stuff. You guys make it fun, like for sure every time. But yeah, just thanks a bunch for coming on. I really enjoyed having you here.
Cool. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, no problem. VOD will be up after this episode concludes for Austin's episode, and then after that, tomorrow I'll be sure to make to add this one to the playlist. So if you guys
Awesome.
want a link to that, just do exclamation SB Melee in chat, and you can check out that playlist. But yeah, thanks again, and have a good rest of your day.
You too, dude.
All right, thanks. Peace out.